Some places don't chase you away. They wait. They let you build. They let you dream. They let you believe you are safe. And then, they begin to take. Tonight's story is not about a monster hiding in the dark, or a shadow that jumps out when the lights go off. It's about land. Quiet land. In rural Arkansas. Land that watched family after family arrive and leave. Without explanation. Without warning. This is the true account of what happened to John Miller, a stone craftsman who built his life on 2.5 acres of open ground, and slowly realized that something else had already claimed it. You will hear about a fatal accident at a gate that never felt the same afterward, about machines that ran without power, about children who grew sick for no medical reason, and about a warning delivered through a man who had no memory of speaking. But listen carefully, because the most disturbing part of this story is not what happened while they lived there, it's what still happens after they left. So if you hear footsteps where no one should be standing, if you feel the urge to look toward the door, or if the silence around you suddenly feels heavier than it should, don't stop listening. Because some stories don't end when the family escapes. Some places never let go. There are places in rural Arkansas where the air feels heavier than it should, where the wind moves through the trees but never seems to leave, and where the ground beneath your feet carries memories older than any house built on it. This is a story about one of those places, and about my closest friend, John Miller. John lived in a small, forgettable town, one of those towns you could drive through without ever knowing its name. He was a craftsman by trade. Granite, marble, stone meant to last longer than the hands that shaped it. He installed countertops in farmhouses, polished marble floors in churches, cut headstones with names he never asked about. His business was thriving, too thriving. Orders stacked up. Workers complained about space. The old workshop, once more than enough, began to feel tight, suffocating. John wanted room to breathe. So when a landowner offered him a long-term lease on 2.5 acres just outside town, flat land, cheap, quiet, John didn't hesitate. Neither did Emily, his wife. The land sat alone, bordered by thin tree lines and open fields that stretched until the horizon dissolved into haze. No nearby houses. No fences close enough to matter. Just land. They signed the contract for several years. Planned a combined home and workshop. A place to live and work and grow old. Construction began in early spring. At first, everything went right. The foundation was poured cleanly. The framing went up fast. Even the weather cooperated. Then they reached the point no one ever thinks much about. The septic system. The excavation crew arrived early one morning. Machines growled. Shovels cut into the soil. At first, the dirt came up dry, packed, normal. But as the pit grew deeper, something changed. The walls began to cave in. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just slumping inward. The foreman ordered reinforcement. They tested the soil again. No issues. No water. No reason for collapse. They dug again. The same thing happened. The pit refused to hold its shape. Corners softened. Edges folded in like something breathing beneath the surface. One of the workers wiped sweat from his face and muttered, half joking, "This ground don't like being opened." They laughed. But the laughter didn't last long. Hour after hour, the hole shifted. Measurements changed without explanation. Stakes moved overnight. Soil settled too fast, then too slow. It felt wrong. Eventually, they forced the septic tank into place, filled the hole, compacted the soil, and then something unsettling happened. The ground settled perfectly, too perfectly, as if the land had been waiting. John noticed it. He stood there longer than necessary, staring at the flat earth, feeling a strange pressure in his chest. But success has a way of drowning out quiet warnings. The house and workshop were finished by fall. They moved in. A small housewarming party followed. Friends, workers, food and laughter spilling into the night. Music echoed across the open fields, fading into darkness. The land remained silent. No strange sounds. No shadows, no unease. For nearly a year, everything flourished. John's machines ran smooth. Blades cut stone like butter. Orders came faster than ever. Emily's online business took off. Their kids laughed, slept well, too well. Looking back, that was the strangest part. Because land like that never gives without taking. John would later tell me that sometimes, late at night, he felt watched when locking up the workshop. Not by eyes, but by presence. A sense of standing at the gate, just beyond the reach of the lights. He never mentioned it then, because nothing bad had happened yet. And when nothing bad happens, you convince yourself nothing ever will. But the land remembered. It remembered every shovel, every cut, every piece of earth displaced. And it waited, quietly, patiently, for the moment when the silence could no longer hold. There is a moment when a place stops being neutral. You don't notice it right away. There is no sound, no flash, no warning. Just a shift. A weekend night in late summer. The air over rural Arkansas was thick, pressing down on the land like a heavy blanket. Crickets sang in waves. The kind of night where sound travels farther than it should. John had invited a few of his workers to the workshop. Nothing wild. Just a small gathering after a long week. Cold beer, tired laughter, engines cooling in the dark. By 11, the men began to leave. Headlights cut across the fields, then disappeared down the road. By midnight, the property was quiet again. John locked the workshop. Emily had already gone inside with the kids. John's pickup truck sat parked just inside the gate, angled slightly toward the driveway. He remembered glancing at it, absent-mindedly, before turning toward the house. That was when he heard it. At first, it sounded like wind. Then, it grew louder. An engine, not steady, not controlled, screaming. John turned just as the sound reached him. Headlights burst out of the darkness beyond the gate, swerving wildly, bouncing as if the road itself had vanished. There was no brake, no hesitation, just speed. The motorcycle slammed into the rear of John's truck with a sound that didn't belong in a quiet place. Metal folded. Glass exploded. The impact echoed across the fields and trees like a gunshot, then rolled outward, fading slowly into the night. John froze. For a brief moment, the world felt suspended, unreal, like a dream refusing to finish. Then Emily screamed from the porch. John ran. The motorcycle lay twisted near the gate. The rider's body was still, broken in ways the mind refuses to understand. No movement, no breath. The engine continued to whine softly, as if confused, before dying out. Police arrived quickly. Red and blue lights washed over the land, flickering across the workshop walls, the gate, the trees. The officer's flashlight lingered on the rider's face, then moved away. Dead at the scene. They said there were no skid marks, no attempt to slow down. Later, the report would say the man was heavily intoxicated. Blood alcohol levels far beyond legal limits. He had been speeding, recklessly, blindly. The conclusion was clear. John was not at fault. Still, John didn't sleep that night. In the days that followed, he paid for the man's funeral. Quietly. No press. No explanation. He told me later that he didn't know why he felt responsible, only that something about the accident felt unfinished, like a sentence cut short. After the funeral, things began to shift. Not dramatically. At first, it was subtle. A stone-cutting blade jammed for no reason. A machine overheated despite recent maintenance. A delivery canceled without explanation. John brushed it off. But Emily noticed her online business acting strange. Accounts locked. Orders lost. Messages disappearing. Small things. Annoying things. Then the neighbors began talking. An older man from down the road mentioned, casually, that others had tried living on that land before. They never stay, he said. Don't know why. Another neighbor said the same. Different renters. Different plans. Same ending. Most left quietly. No complaints. No arguments. Just gone. John started paying attention to the gate. He couldn't explain it, but something about that spot felt heavier now. The air seemed thicker there. Sound dulled. Even daylight felt strained. One evening, while locking up, John thought he saw someone standing just beyond the gate. A man. Still. Facing the road. When John stepped closer, there was no one there. The lights didn't flicker. The wind didn't move. But the feeling remained. Like the land had accepted something it wasn't ready to release. That night, John dreamed of the sound of an engine, revving endlessly, never reaching anything, never stopping. The crash replayed in his sleep, but always in slow motion. Always just before impact and never ending. The gate. The road. The moment frozen forever. Something had changed. Not in the house. Not in the workshop. But at the boundary. At the entrance. The place where things arrived. And where one man never left. And the land, now aware, began to respond. When a place turns against you, it rarely does so loudly. Most of the time, it whispers. John tried to ignore the whispers. He focused on work, on repairs, on numbers, on anything that could be explained. But the problems kept coming, small enough to dismiss individually, yet constant enough to drain the life from every day. Machines broke without reason. Orders slowed, then stopped. Emily's online business glitched in ways customer support could never explain. And always, there was the gate. John avoided standing there now. The place where the motorcycle had struck. The place where the ground seemed darker, heavier, like it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. People in town noticed his exhaustion. That was when the stories started reaching him. Not directly. Never directly. An older woman at the feed store mentioned it first. "You know, that land's been passed around a lot." John asked what she meant. She shrugged. "Folks don't stay long." Another man at the gas station added quietly, "Every renter thinks they're different." No one elaborated. No one wanted to. Finally, someone gave John a name. A woman who lived in the next town over. A psychic. John didn't believe in psychics. But desperation has a way of bending beliefs. The woman lived in a narrow house at the edge of town. Wind chimes hung from the porch, clinking softly even when there was no wind. The air smelled of incense and old wood. She didn't ask for names. She didn't ask why they were there. She simply said, "Take me to the land." They drove in silence. The moment she stepped out of the car, her posture changed. She didn't walk toward the house. She walked toward the gate and stopped. Her face tightened. She closed her eyes. "This place is crowded," she said quietly. John felt a chill run through him. She knelt and pressed her palm against the ground, just above where the septic system lay buried. "They were here before you," she whispered. "They were resting." John asked who. She didn't answer right away. "Spirits," she finally said. "Restless ones." She stood and walked slowly across the land, stopping occasionally, tilting her head as if listening to something beneath the soil. Then she turned toward the gate. "There is one who doesn't understand that he is dead." John's stomach tightened. She described the motorcycle crash without being told. "He stands there," she said, "watching the road, waiting for something that already happened." She explained that the septic system had been built directly over a place where these spirits gathered, hid, rested. "You broke their shelter," she said. "They are angry." The instructions came quickly. Apologies. Offerings placed outside the gate. Protective charms hung at the workshop and house. John followed everything. That night, they placed food and small items by the gate. Candles flickered weakly in the still air. For the first time in weeks, the land felt quiet again. For nearly a month, things improved. Orders returned. Machines ran smoothly. Emily smiled again. John allowed himself to believe. Then, the other things began. A worker napping during lunch screamed and bolted upright, swearing someone had grabbed his ankles, dragged him toward the dark. Another claimed to see a man walking through the workshop. No face, just a shape moving against the light. Machines powered on by themselves, blades spinning, motors humming, despite being unplugged. At night, footsteps circled the building. Slow, measured, never entering. And the children, they grew pale. The youngest fell sick, again and again. Fevers came without warning. Weakness lingered. Doctors found nothing. The house felt drained, like something was feeding. John returned to the psychic. Her confidence was gone. "This is bigger than I thought," she said. "They're not leaving." She wouldn't step onto the land again. John realized something then. The land wasn't cursed. It was occupied. And whatever lived there was no longer content with whispers. There is a difference. between a place that is haunted and a place that rejects you. John learned that difference the hard way. By the time fall returned, exhaustion had settled deep into the Miller household. Not the kind that sleep could fix, but the kind that hollowed people out from the inside. The children were rarely well, especially the youngest. Fevers came in waves. Weakness lingered for days. Doctors found nothing. Emily stopped sleeping. And John began waking every night at the same hour, 3:17, always to the same sensation. Pressure, like standing too close to something that did not want him there. That was when they turned to the church. Not their local one, but a Catholic church nearly an hour away, one known quietly for dealing with things others would not touch. The priest listened. He did not interrupt. He did not take notes. He simply watched John as the story unfolded: the land, the crash, the psychic, the offerings, the shadows, the children. When John finished, the priest remained silent for a long moment. Then he said something John had not expected. "You should not stay on that land." No dramatic language, no ritual, no promise of cleansing, just a statement. The priest explained that some places were burdened by unresolved death, layered suffering, and human attempts to control what should be surrendered. Living there is inviting conflict, he said. Not all battles are meant to be fought. He advised them to move the family, at least temporarily. John felt both relief and shame. Leaving felt like failure, but staying felt worse. Within weeks, John rented a small house about 5 miles away. Modest, quiet, ordinary. The family moved. The workshop remained. But something changed immediately. No one would stay after sunset. Workers packed up early, glancing nervously toward the darkened corners of the building. One man refused to use the restroom alone. Another quit without notice. They all said the same thing: "It watches when it gets dark." Business continued to fall. John's savings thinned. Then came the second spiritual advisor. This one spoke differently. "There is an entity," the man said. "It feeds on attention, accepts offerings, then destroys slowly." He warned that the first psychic's protections may have worsened things. "Something there pretends to accept peace," he said, "but it only buys time." He offered a solution: a binding ritual, physical objects, folk methods passed down through generations. John agreed. Anything to stop the bleeding. The ritual items were prepared. John was instructed to bring them back and place them carefully across the land. But fate intervened. On the drive home, John stopped at a small roadside cafe, one he had visited many times before. It was owned by Samuel Carter, a quiet man, a vegetarian, a lifelong Christian. John ordered coffee, and then everything changed. The cafe sat alone on a stretch of rural road that rarely saw traffic after dark. A single-story building, faded paint, a flickering open sign that buzzed softly in the window. John had stopped there countless times before. It felt safe. The owner, Samuel Carter, was a quiet man, a vegetarian, a lifelong Christian who never drank, never swore, and never spoke badly about anyone. He moved slowly, deliberately, like a man who had made peace with the world. That night, John ordered coffee and sat at the counter. The ritual items sat wrapped on the passenger seat of his truck. John's hands shook as he lifted the cup. He hadn't slept properly in weeks. Samuel poured the coffee. Then he stopped. The cup froze in his hand. His shoulders stiffened. John noticed the change immediately. Samuel's breathing slowed, then deepened, as if something heavy had settled into his chest. The cafe felt colder. The buzzing of the sign grew louder, sharper, like an insect trapped behind glass. Samuel turned slowly toward John. His eyes were wrong, not blank, not angry, just unfamiliar. When he spoke, it was not Samuel's voice. It was older, rougher, and it said John's name. John. John's stomach dropped. Samuel leaned forward slightly, gripping the counter as if holding himself in place. "I don't have much time," the voice said, "and you need to listen." John tried to speak. Nothing came out. "I am your grandfather," the voice continued, "the one who died before you learned how to work stone." John's chest tightened. His grandfather had passed away when John was a child. A man of routine, faith, quiet authority. The voice continued, "You are standing where you should not stand." John felt tears burning behind his eyes. "The land you are trying to fight is not empty," the voice said, "and you are being led into danger." The cafe lights flickered once, then steadied. Samuel's hands began to tremble. "Do not use charms," the voice said. "Do not bind. Do not trap. Do not attempt control." A pause. Heavy. "If you do, you will not be the one who suffers first." John's breath caught. "The thing there accepts offerings," the voice continued, "but it takes payment slowly, patiently." John glanced instinctively toward the door, toward the truck, toward the wrapped ritual items. "Remove everything," the voice commanded. "Every charm, every offering." Samuel's breathing became ragged. "Bring your father's photograph home," the voice said. "Set up the family altar. Pray daily." Another pause. "Give this to God," it said, "or it will take more than your work." The cafe went silent. No buzzing, no traffic, no sound at all. Then Samuel collapsed forward. John caught him before his head hit the counter. Samuel's eyes fluttered open moments later. Confused. "What happened?" he asked. He remembered nothing. John left the cafe shaking. That night, he did exactly as instructed. He removed every charm, every offering, every object tied to protection or binding. He brought home the family photographs, set up the altar, prayed, not loudly, not perfectly, just honestly. The next morning, something felt different. The air in the house was lighter. The children slept longer. The youngest's fever broke. At the workshop, nothing happened. No shadows, no sounds, no machines starting on their own. Days passed, then weeks. Life did not return immediately, but it stopped unraveling. John moved the workshop to a smaller plot of land, left the old property behind. No one rented it. No one wanted it. Even now, people say that early in the morning, just before sunrise, a figure can sometimes be seen walking through the abandoned workshop. Not fast, not slow, just walking, as if waiting for something, as if waiting for someone who will never come. Some places don't need to chase you away. They simply wait until you understand that leaving is the only way to survive. John Miller never went back to the land alone again. After the night at the cafe, after the voice that was not Samuel's, something fundamental shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but the pressure lifted. The kind of pressure you don't realize you're carrying until it's gone. The children slept. For the first time in months, the youngest woke without a fever. Color returned to his face slowly, like a photograph developing in weak light. Emily began sleeping through the night. Not peacefully, not deeply, but without waking in panic, convinced she had heard footsteps in the hallway. John prayed every morning, not out of fear, out of discipline. He dismantled the altar offerings tied to the land, left nothing behind. No apologies, no protection, no attempt at balance, just absence. Within weeks, John moved his workshop to a smaller plot on the edge of another town. Nothing special, nothing cheap, nothing with history worth mentioning. Stone-cutting machines ran clean. Orders returned, slowly, carefully, as if testing him. No shadows followed. No sounds lingered after hours. And yet, John refused to drive past the old land. When someone mentioned it, his jaw tightened. His eyes drifted elsewhere. The property remained empty. No for rent sign lasted more than a week before being torn down, or falling, or disappearing entirely. People in town said it was coincidence, but they also avoided that road, especially at dawn, especially when the fog rolled low across the fields. An older man claimed he saw movement inside the abandoned workshop one morning while driving past. He slowed, looked again, and felt something he couldn't name. He didn't stop. Another neighbor said she heard machinery running just before sunrise. Soft, distant, like a memory replaying itself. When she returned later, the building was silent, locked, empty. John told me all this months later, sitting across from me in a diner far from that land. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if choosing the wrong words might invite something back. "I don't think it wanted us dead," he said. "I think it wanted us gone." He never tried to explain what it was. He didn't need to. Some nights, he said, he still dreamed of the gate, the road beyond it, the sound of an engine revving too high, too fast, forever approaching something it would never reach. But the dreams no longer followed him into waking life. They stayed where they belonged, on land that was no longer his. Years have passed since then. The workshop still stands, rotting quietly, wood swelling, metal rusting, nature reclaiming what was borrowed. No one owns it. No one wants to. And early, very early, when the sun has not yet decided whether to rise, people say a figure can sometimes be seen moving through the building. Not transparent, not glowing, just present, walking the same path, from the back of the workshop, toward the gate, over and over again, never crossing, never leaving, as if the land made a promise, and keeps it, patiently, forever.